Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a good day. I'm going to be talking about the topic that I read for the academic analysis article. I read the book From Here to Equality. I chose chapter 13, a program of Black reparations, because I'm part of the reparations group. And so I felt that was going to be probably the best chapter to read if I wanted to learn a little bit about the topic. So obviously, just to begin with, the topic is the most ideal program for Black reparations, since there's a lot of debate surrounding it. The thesis for the whole chapter was basically that, there are many ways to conduct reparations that people have debated, but there were certain programs, ideas, and actions that could be taken, created to best deliver reparations to the Black Americans who deserve restitution for years of discrimination their ancestors deserved and have endured, that they themselves have endured, and that they're still enduring today. But one of the things that the author really mentions is that the main goal is to eliminate the racial wealth gap within a decade between blacks and whites in America. That's truly the main goal here, and they talk about the program or the plan of action that they think would be best for that. Again, no hypotheses. It wasn't a research study or experiment. It was just a book, so none of that. So there were many claims made, but some of the evidence that they used for some of these claims were previous reparations programs. So with Germany, when they had during the Holocaust, when they were trying to give reparations to those victims, they actually sent them money to, and they had payments allocated over time. So I think the book mentioned that it was $100 a month or something like that. And they had also sent money to Israel, sort of as more of a symbolic reparation, right? Sort of that. And so our author kind of uses past experiences with that to set precedents for how the U.S. should handle their reparations. And there were also, when they were talking about the calculations for how much reparations it should be, there were many different ways that they did it, and a lot of the calculations ended up being upwards of trillions of dollars. And so they calculate based on estimates just by leaders in the field, so economists or not, present value of land that was promised, the monetary value of slaves to owners at the time. You also had post-slavery costs of discrimination, so in the Jim Crow era, and then again just an estimate more to racial wealth gap. That's the big one that the author really wants. Is they took that, the racial wealth gap that they have now, and is saying that's what the reparations should be, so that it can be true equality as of now, right? And also one of the claims that they made was that they don't need to raise taxes in order to fund reparations. Some of the examples they gave is that money can come from the Federal Reserve Bank, or it doesn't even have to come from government. It can come from institutions, corporations that had also profited from slavery or Jim Crow. I think that a couple examples they gave were banks and insurance companies, because they were especially guilty of discrimination. They had redlining, right? So those are a couple of examples. But despite that, the author actually kind of emphasized that it should still come from government, considering it was a public atrocity and it was the government's fault as well as individual, and it should be public money that reparations is sourced from. Some of the findings and conclusions that the author talks about was that monetary restitution, they believed, is going to be the best form of reparations, just both symbolically and substantively, because it was wealth, really, that once the slaves were emancipated, that they were promised and that they were never given. So that's one of the reasons they think it's best. They also said that government commissions and committees should be formed to help carry out these programs. So talked about a National Reparations Bureau, a 12-member Reparations Supervisory Board, commissioned to study and develop proposals for reparations for African Americans. So, they think that the government should also do this, and hopefully in a timely manner, right? And then one of the other conclusions that they came up with was that reparations will confront the structures of injustice forced onto blacks in America. So the problem is generating the political climate to carry this out will be a whole different issue. That was one of the things that they talked about was even though reparations is going to ultimately best confront these problems, the support for it is going to be especially difficult. But honestly, from my whole analysis of the book, I think it did a great job tackling a lot of the many different aspects of this issue, like policy, funding, culture, education. When we talk about specific community psychology principles or competencies, it definitely incorporates participation because it mentions how different community members can be engaged with the issue and promote restitution. For example, they talked about college students and how they can advocate for their colleges or for supporting reparations and any programs or policies for government, because one of the things I mentioned is it's not about the individual institutions like Georgetown. They gave an example. Not about those individual organizations. It's about them coming together and saying, "Hey, government, we need reparations for everyone." Sorry, it's really late. I don't know what I'm saying. It also honestly just incorporates cultural understanding, because in the chapter it also mentioned how things like plays or films, how racial injustice or the history of blacks in America is represented is inaccurate. So reparations can also take the form of accuracy and education. And it also focuses, again, the interventions that they focused at were at many different levels. So it was at federal level, societal, community, individual levels. It involved schools. It was just intervention that would best impact the lives of blacks in America on all fronts, right? Not just on, financial. It was talking about other programs and stuff. And I remember too, they mentioned financial literacy programs or advisors that would help blacks in America, when they receive the reparations, learn how best to succeed with that kind of money, right? Not waste it, be smart with it. So it's financial literacy. I think that's a great example of empowerment. Just giving them power over themselves to hopefully achieve the wealth that they've been denied for so long. And one of the biggest things this incorporates is ethical reflective practice, because again, reparations is about acknowledgement of the atrocities that were committed and the effect it has on Black Americans to this day. It's about apologizing for these atrocities and promising to right these wrongs and set up blacks in America for success after so many years of holding them back from power and wealth. So again, it's about acknowledging that what would happen was unethical. Even if it was legal, it was unethical. And so that's where reparations needs to come into play. But truly what this main chapter was about policy analysis, development, and advocacy. That was one of the big things, because it's, again, they emphasize so heavily on the federal government's role in reparations. And it actually also included community education, information dissemination, and building public awareness too, regarding education about the past injustices that occurred, renewing textbooks, stuff like that. I mentioned things like that. Some of the questions this gave me, though, was the topic of inflation. I'm not an economist, so I'm not the best at understanding it, but I don't think it was addressed properly, and it will be a major issue, because one of the things I mentioned was the Federal Reserve, right? If it comes from there, if we're just printing money, the inflation rate is going to skyrocket. So I question how it will be addressed, and honestly, I question whether trying to fund reparations without taxes is the best way to do it. I know that saying that reparations is going to involve taxes is going to deter support from voters. That's obvious. But I'm curious if it'll cause more trouble in the long run than what it's worth. I don't know. I'm curious, but that's definitely one of the big questions that I have. But I'm gonna try to hustle along because I can see my time's coming up. But for implications, again, just reparations is possible and it's imperative, because with the climate that we have now, we need to acknowledge the wrongs that were committed. There is a precedent set from previous injustices that monetary compensation is called for. When we look back at the Japanese internment camps, Germany with the Holocaust survivors, again, it's going to be more so gaining the support of voters and Congress that is the issue. The money can be raised. Committees can be formed, funds can be allocated, but none of that will happen without proper support from all sides of the spectrum. And for learnings regarding the project that I'm on for the reparations group, honestly, it's not just about righting our wrongs, it's putting blacks in America in the best position possible to succeed. They've been denied those opportunities that whites and white Americans have had for so long, right? It's about, we have a responsibility here, as we need to use our privilege in order to, at least people like me, right? I need to use my privilege to make sure that we are helping reparations as much as we can. Because again, support for reparations is going to be the most crucial and difficult part about it. And that's why projects like these are so important. We're part of the college students that the author calls on for aid in the fight. So we do play a massive role in this. And I think if we are able to use our project to better understand how the public views reparations, hopefully we'll be able to figure out ways to target our audience and combat those, and hopefully gain more support in the long run. But yeah, no, I'm excited for this project, and I hope all of that made sense for all of you. It's been a long day, but no, this was a good chapter though. I actually enjoyed it. Gave me like a better idea of the plan for reparations and the different pathways it can take. But yeah, so that was the chapter. So good night, everyone. Signing off.